people whose backs I see, if you want to make that horrible screeching noise now, spin around, that'd be great. Here it is. Yeah. The sound of Thursday night supper. Okay, let's start with a prayer, shall we? In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord God, as we gather here together today, we praise you with our lips. May we also praise you with our lives. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Okay, so tonight, I want to talk about outsmarting yourself. I'm fascinated by that phrase, that idea. Who has heard that phrase before, outsmarting yourself? Okay. For how many people is that meaningful? Whether you heard it before or not, how many people can kind of make sense of what that means, outsmarting yourself? You've had moments where you feel like, I really need to outsmart myself on this one, or like, I wish I could outsmart myself. Anybody? Hands? Yeah? Okay. It's a meaningful concept to me for sure. I spend a lot of time trying to outsmart myself. And that's fascinating. How many brains do you have, each of you? One. Yeah, I only have, anybody got two? Anybody? That's awesome. Hold it up, come on. Yes. It's even detachable, that's good. I think most people are only born with one brain. Why should we be able to outsmart ourselves? That's weird. But it's actually based on fact. The fact is that there are unconscious processes in our brain that we do not consciously control, and with which we do things and make decisions. So here's an example. Stand up, for real. Everybody stand up. All right, make sure that there's like 1.5 feet in front of you where you have room to swing, okay? You're not going to hit somebody else. You don't have to go to other parts of the room or something. Just turn in a way where you're not going to hit somebody. Okay, this is very complicated, so please pay attention closely. I want you, without making any other movement, to swing your arm forward like this, so that it's pointing ahead of you. Okay, put it back down. Now do it again and again. No other movements at all, anywhere in your body. Just swing your arm forward. Okay, you can sit down. Good job. All right, so here's why I ran you through that silly little exercise. When you consciously chose to raise your arm like this, unbeknownst to you, and in a way that you did not control and didn't need to think about, the muscles in your core moved you forward slightly, ever so slightly, so that the movement, the opposite reaction created by raising your arm wouldn't tip you over backwards. And you didn't know that was happening. I didn't know it was happening. I can't feel it. It's small. But the point is, you didn't have to think about it. Your brain made a bunch of calculations really fast when you said, heads up brain, I'm going to move my arm like this, and adjusted. Now there are also processes in your brain that are equally unconscious that relate to your decision making. And this is weird. So I like talking about weird things. I'm going to talk about some weird things about our brains. The fact is that with these unconscious processes, we don't control them consciously. Some of them are biological. Some of them are built into the human brain, and it's true for everybody, and it's just the way we're wired. So for example, there is a social reciprocity reflex in the human brain that has this bizarre result that has been studied and produced really consistent results. If I come to you and I ask for $10,000 for a charitable cause, I want you to make a donation of $10,000. There is, whatever the probability, if I do that to 100 people, some percentage of them will agree. I might need to do it to 1,000 people. I'd probably pick people who have $10,000 to give away. Some will say yes, some will say no. There's a percentage there. If I begin by greeting them warmly, and giving them some small gift, like a pen. Here's this pen, and I make it clear, this is a gift I'm giving. The probability of people saying yes to a donation of $10,000 increases significantly. Here's a pen. Give me 10,000 bucks. Now, consciously, it makes no sense for that to have any impact, but there is actually a social reflex built into the human brain where we want to reciprocate. Somebody does something nice for you, you want to do something nice for them. And there are plenty others of these. So the point is that a lot of the things we do every day, decisions like reaching out and picking up a piece of food and putting it in your mouth, for example, have a lot to do with unconscious decision-making processes that we're not aware of. If we become aware of them, then we can either consciously compensate for them. So unconscious brain says, food, and conscious mind goes, no, we're not doing that today. Remember, you had 6 Krispy Kreme donuts already. So you can short-circuit that process, or you can train yourself out of it. Some of it is not biologically part of the human brain, but we kind of train ourselves into unconscious habits. And we can train ourselves out of them if we know what to do and work on them. So I want to talk about what that means for procrastination and stress and things like that tonight. So some practical brain science. I want to start with by having you discuss something at your tables. So start, pick up your pen, by writing down, so don't talk to people about this, just take a moment quietly, and write on a piece of paper in front of you one thing, now listen carefully, one thing that if you did it or stopped doing it, it would make a significant impact on your effectiveness in life and your general happiness. One thing that if you did it or stopped doing it would have a significant impact on your effectiveness and your general happiness. So think of something, write it down, and then I'm going to have you share it with each other. Something that would increase your happiness and effectiveness. So think school, work, in terms of effectiveness, and general happiness. Okay, so just go around your table, and if you feel comfortable, share those things. is it related to basic bodily needs? All right, raise them up high. And keep them up, okay? Now, also raise your hand, please, if it was related to discipline of life. Making better decisions for yourself. Okay. All right, keep them up and raise your hand if it was somehow related to a source of anxiety. Now keep them up if you were any of those things. Okay, that's most people in the room. All right, you can put your hands down. So tonight I want to talk about some interesting things that brain research tells us about how to live better with regard to a lot of that kind of stuff. Now, I have a master's in cognitive therapy from No Such University, and I received my doctorate in neuropathology from not actually a thing School of Medicine. But I've been sort of taking an audio course by Professor Peter Vishton from William and Mary, and it's called Outsmarting Yourself, and it's about understanding how the brain operates, and then figuring out how to make better decisions or understand things about our lives with regard to a whole wide range of things. It's been fascinating. But I just want to focus on a couple of things. All right. I must confess, I lured you here this evening under slightly false pretenses. I told you I was going to talk about stress management. And I am, but the thing I want to start with that I think is incredibly important for managing stress is sleep. All right, now, be honest. How many of you, as soon as I mentioned sleep, thought in your mind, whatever, John Moore, it's just not possible, can't do it, sorry. How many people? Yeah, a fair number of whatever John Moore's out there, right? Okay, let's get that out of the way right now. I want to deal with that right now. On your piece of paper, get your piece of paper and your pen. All right, this is an individual quiet activity, okay? I want you to make a list. I'm going to tell you categories of things, ways that you spend time. Perhaps you spend time in these ways. And I want you to write how much time you spend doing that on an average day. All right? So if it's like, I don't know, if it's 4 hours, 2 days a week, just average it out somehow and get like a generic average day. How much time you spend doing each of these things. Take a guess, okay? This doesn't have to be a scientific study. All right, how much time every day, on average, do you spend studying where you're tired enough that it's basically useless? How much time do you spend trying to study and failing because you're too tired to focus or process the information? All right, that's one. Now, how much time do you spend on an average day complaining to other people that you're tired? That's a real thing, isn't it? That was a real good head nod up here. That's great. Okay, third one. How much time do you spend on an average day procrastinating? Doing things that you're only doing them because you're avoiding doing something else. Okay, thing number 4. How much time do you spend that is not included in the procrastinating? So don't include procrastination stuff, but other miscellaneous, aimless internet usage. So you're on Facebook not because there was something you wanted to look at or pictures you wanted to see or something, but just because like you've got nothing else to do or just whatever, I'll look at Facebook. The YouTube rabbit hole would be included in this. All right, number 5. Stay with me. How much time on an average day do you spend snoozing your alarm? So let me be clear. What I mean by this is the elapsed time from when your alarm goes off and you are no longer really getting any quality sleep to when you get up. So like if you snooze and you sleep another half hour, then okay, great. But it's like the time in bed that is not useful sleeping rest time, but you just can't get up. All right, next one. one. There's only two more, okay? Napping, whether on purpose or not. Napping, whether on purpose or not. Again, this is an average day, an average amount of time. Okay, last one. How much time on an average day do you spend watching TV and movies? Not including the YouTube rabbit hole. If you included it under aimless web usage, don't include it on this one. All right, you ready? Here's the super hard part, okay? Add all of those numbers so you get a total. All right, here we go. How many people, now here's the point, right? How many people, if you stopped doing those things, so if you spent 0 time on an average day doing those things, pointless internet surfing, watching TV, napping because you're too tired to stay awake, things like that, complaining that you're tired. So your total number for the day. How many people would win back less than an hour? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. How many people would win back less than 2 hours? So 5.5 people over here are going to not. Okay. So what that means is that with the exception of those 5.5 people in this room, all of you could get at least 2 more hours of sleep on an average night. Okay? So look, here's the whole point of this exercise, right? The whatever I can't, John Moore, not true. You can, right? All right, you can. Now, why don't people get enough sleep? It's not because you don't want to. It's not because you can't. We just took care of that one. I think it's because you're living reactively. You're living in a mode where life is living you rather than you living life. Now, it's easy to fall into this in lots of areas of life. It doesn't mean you're doing that comprehensively. It might mean that you're doing it comprehensively. That's something to think about. But the point is, we want to live proactively. You don't want your life to be determined by the stuff that happens to you. Each of you has free will. It's a gift from God that He's given you so that you can thrive, not just get by, right? And this is good news. There is nothing impeding you. There's no obstacle to you deciding, I am going to begin living in a way that I perceive is good for me and will enable me to thrive. You're free to do that. You're grown-ups now. Being a grown-up means taking responsibility for your own life. That's pretty much it. So I want to encourage you, the next time you think, I can't afford to get more sleep. Yes, you can. That's not the problem. So then ask yourself, wait a minute, what's really the problem? And work on that. And if it means taking responsibility for the way your life is going and for your habits and stuff, then do that, because you can. All right, I need a volunteer who draws poorly but is willing to get up and draw a picture in front of people anyway. Louise, come on up. Great, you good artists out there, this is simple, I don't need any fancy art. Louise has disappeared.
She's going through the kitchen.
She's gone around the back. Applause. Okay, I'm going to describe some things. Yeah, on the ground there. I'm going to describe some things and I want you to draw them, okay? The first thing I need you to draw is a picture as large as you can of a brain. No detail, just the outline. Just the outline of a brain. Yeah, that's okay. early spinal cord. Good. All of you people taking anatomy, just don't worry about it. All right, now I want, how many people have heard that there are cells in your brain? Good. Anybody have an estimate about how many there are? I think it's 100 trillion. Okay, but I only want you to draw 10. Okay, and I want them to be really big, and I want them to be touching each other, but like with space in between. So, if you draw 4 circles next to each other, there's going to be a space in the middle. Go for it. Excellent. Excellent. Check it out. Okay. We've got a brain, we've got cells. Now, stay there because there's one more thing you have to draw, but I have to talk first. All right, your brain. Ready? Here's an interesting thing I learned from a TED Talk about a neurology guy that was talking about research he was doing. And this is interesting. All right, most of your body has the lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system is dedicated to getting rid of, what? Oh, we have a bio major here. All right, it's dedicated to getting rid of waste, right? So you've got blood vessels that pump nutrients and oxygen and stuff to your cells. Your cells use that stuff up, they produce waste products, and then the lymphatic system carries all of that stuff to your kidneys and all the other things that process waste to get rid of it, right? The lymphatic system throws out the trash for your body. The lymphatic system doesn't extend to your brain. I'm right on. Good. Elizabeth's checking it. This is good. So what this guy was talking about in the TED Talk is they've discovered that during sleep, during waking time, that the waste products from brain cells are just kind of kicked out of the cells over the course of the day. When you sleep, the cells contract ever so slightly. The fluid that surrounds the brain floods in and penetrates between all the cells along the outside of the blood vessels and clears out the waste. Waking time, using stuff. Sleeping time, getting rid of the waste. Okay. How many people have experienced waking up after not enough rest and feeling foggy-headed? It is because you have a head full of brain poop. Can you draw just draw little bits in between all the cells. Yeah, good. You didn't think you were going to get asked to draw poop, did you? That's great, thank you. Okay, applaud for Louise, please. Thank you. Okay, I'm being somewhat ridiculous about this, but this is actually true. Okay, your brain works or doesn't work based on whether you take care of it. Your knees work the same way. If you don't take care of your knees, they ain't going to work right. Your car works the same way. If you don't get an oil change now and then, your car is not going to last very long. Your brain works that way too. It has basic needs to function properly. If you want your brain, how many people want their brain to function properly? I sure do. I could use more of that in my life. The basic point is that sleep, not just this, but in 100 other ways, is an opportunity for brain maintenance. There are lots of things that happen during sleep that rejuvenate your brain and get it ready for proper functioning during your waking hours. These processes affect all kinds of stuff: creativity, problem solving, temperature regulation of your body. I actually have noticed this in myself. During the times when I was sleep deprived, like taking care of Tessa as a baby, I noticed that I sweat more during the day. I'd have more difficulty keeping my body temperature regulated on an average day. It was fascinating and kind of uncomfortable. Okay, so that's one thing. Another thing that this directly concerns is memory. How many people are students? All right, your memory is somewhat important to that endeavor, right?
No.
You have to process information, and you have to stick it in there in a way that it stays and can be used later. Your memory works poorer when you're sleep deprived. So let's take, this is College John, all right? If I could go back and talk to College John, I'd have a few things to say. I'd probably slap him around a little bit. I have a paper due. The paper is due on, let's say, Thursday. On Wednesday, I might have some of the books I need to read to begin to prepare the stuff for my paper. I wasn't always that bad, but I remember one time in particular that was just miserable. I sat down at 10 p.m. with the books I needed to do research from, and I had a 10-page paper due the next day. Okay, right? So I sat down with a big bottle of soda. I can't believe I did this. A whole bunch of candy that I liked, a computer, and a room that I could be in all night. And I typed all night. I still remember the feeling as day was breaking of looking down at my hands and watching them go like this from all the Mountain Dew. All right. Now, I needed to write a paper, right? I got no sleep. Okay, now, all right. So that's the scenario, right? How many people, if they were going to prepare to write a paper, right? You're planning way ahead, you're getting ready to write the paper. What you would say to yourself is, look, I need to do some good thinking about this. I've got to do some research where I retain things in my memory. I need to think creatively about the material, figure out how to organize it. So what I'll do is make sure that my brain never functions at peak during the entire time that I'm working on the paper. I'm going to make sure that my memory is really, has shifted down into a low gear, and that all of my creativity mostly has evaporated. And I'm also going to try and be sure that my attention span is really short, and my ability to focus on things is, much lower than usual. I think that's going to be a recipe for total success with my paper. But studying for exams, don't you do that, right? You got an exam the next day? Oh no, I urgently need to be as effective in my studying as possible, so I will stay up all night, staring at the page like this. And you find that 10 minutes have gone by and you remember nothing of what you were looking at, right? You have to flip back several pages. Okay. All this to make the point that you gotta sleep if you want your brain to work. I'm trying to motivate you, okay? Here's another thing about sleep, and I think this is really interesting. REM sleep, we've all heard about REM sleep. It stands for rapid eye movement. It's the time of night where you dream. Your brain is very active, and REM sleep is critical for something that happens with your memory. You store things in long-term memory during the day, but then overnight, during dreaming, your brain consolidates those memories and creates connections in the brain that associate the stuff that you learn with other things and make that memory more permanent and more clear. And so memory is super impacted by how much REM sleep you get in particular. If you get 8 hours of sleep total, but they wake you up so that you never get into REM sleep, which is at the end of a sleep cycle, your memory for things the previous day really suffers. The kicker is that you get only a tiny bit of REM sleep the first sleep cycle of about an hour and a half. And then the next cycle, there's a little bit more, and a little bit more, and it gets longer over the course of the night. So roughly 40% of the REM sleep in an 8-hour period happens in the last 2 sleep cycles. So if you cheat yourself out of those last 2, even though you got, 5 hours or something, you still have really not had much REM sleep at all. So it's those last few hours that are the most important, and when you only get a shortened amount, then you're losing the most important part of your night's sleep. So the whole 8 hours a night thing, that's why. It takes a certain amount of time to go through several sleep cycles. At the end of those sleep cycles is when you have the REM sleep. The 8 hours gives you a chance to go through all of that whole process and really get a good night's sleep. Good. That's important to know. Okay, so that's it for sleep, all right? Look, this is all I want. Just sleep more, please. You can. It will make you happier. A lot happier. Your brain will work better. You'll be a better student. You'll have a better memory of the cool things you do on a given day. It's gonna be awesome, all right? What he says in the course is take the 2-week sleep challenge. Rearrange, just work differently. Figure it out so that you can get 8 hours of sleep every night for 2 weeks. And if that doesn't transform your experience of daily life, then fine, go back to sleeping as little as you were before. But try it. Try it, you'll like it. Okay, that's the point. Good. I'm going to move on to the next thing, which is procrastination, but first we're going to take a smiling break. It's always fun to do something really weird looking, I find. So this is actually another little random tidbit that I picked up, which is that there's actually a connection between the muscles in your face and your brain, such that if you make yourself smile, and they do this in clinical trials, for example, by having someone hold a pen between their teeth, but they're telling their lips aren't allowed to touch the pen. It's basically you're forced to... Okay? If you do that for a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, it makes you happier. And the bizarre thing is, you can be laughing at yourself the whole time. This is ridiculous. I can't believe I'm doing this. There's no way this can possibly work. It will still work. All right? Ready? Smile. Everybody. You don't have to be feeling it. It's okay. Just smile. Look at the person across from you, because they're probably really weird. Okay, you can stop. Thank you. I mean, keep smiling. Like I hope you're smiling. Good. All right, that's one of the fun parts about having a microphone. You can make people do silly things. I need someone to write on the board for me who has good, clear handwriting. All right, I want people to just throw things out, okay? Well, raise your hand, I guess that'll be it. Fill in the blank. When I don't want to do an assignment, when I don't want to get started on a big project, I insert action verb. What do you actually do? Things you do when you're trying to do it. Okay, what? YouTube. Netflix. Online shopping. I can't hear you. Okay, shh. What is it? Instagram. Talk to friends. Dance. Eat. Clean. How many people only clean their room when they have a really big test coming up? Yeah, that's why. Dance. Awesome. Okay.
I did that earlier.
Did you get those?
I said my answer to organize my calendar.
Make sure you get clean.
Hour 35 minutes.
Video games. Good. Are we missing any other ones? What are we missing? Sleep. Pray. Yeah. Play sports. All right. Now here's the fun part. Ready? How many of these things help you to get started on your project? Pray. Sleep. Eating, maybe. Probably you're not like, I really don't want to do this project, I'm going to have some grapes and peas. Okay. Alright, so circle those. Circle pray and sleep. Alright, we're going to leave the other ones alone. Some of those other ones can or might not work. Okay, thank you. No. Okay, this is something very interesting to me. The urge to reduce anxiety is as strong an impulse in us as the desire for food. It's a really, really basic, fundamental human instinct to reduce anxiety. Now, most of our existence as a species on the planet, we were hunter-gatherers. Our technology was remarkably limited, and mostly anxiety, fear, those kinds of things were survival mechanisms. I want to not be eaten by tigers. It's bad for my survival. Oh look, a tiger. I want to reduce the anxiety I now feel by running away or stabbing the tiger. But the point is, it's immediate. You know, when you feel hungry, your body goes, hey, we're hungry. The next thing is like, how can I get some food? You don't put it on a list, maybe I'll get to it tomorrow. It's an immediate response. It's the same with the desire to reduce anxiety that we feel. So usually, avoidance behaviors are aimed at reducing anxiety. And largely, I think, because of a fear of failure in some way. I'm afraid I don't have enough time and I won't get it in on time and I'm gonna fail. Or I'm afraid that I can't do it well enough. Or I don't have the resources I need to do it well. Or whatever. So, two quick tips that revolve around reducing anxiety. And this one, to me, is very counterintuitive, but after I thought about it a while, I think it would work. When you have a thing, all right, so you have a thing, right? You've got a test you need to study for, a paper you need to write, a group project, whatever the thing is, and you don't want to do it. We've all felt this, right? You think about it, and your brain goes, punches the thing in the face and runs in the other direction, right? YouTube! Sit for 20 minutes and do nothing. Sit down for 20 minutes, or go for a walk. Going for a walk would be good too. And do nothing. Now, here's the thing. If you want to avoid whatever the project is, the paper, whatever, and you start on Instagram, time is passing. Hours are going by. YouTube is just calling your name. It's automatically popping up the next video, and you go, ooh, what's that one? I want to watch that one too. But the point is, it does not actually reduce your anxiety about the project. It just distracts your brain so it's not thinking about it. The moment you go back to thinking about the project, all of the anxiety is still there, and it's worse because you now have 3 fewer hours to do it. So now it's like, I'm afraid I'm going to do it bad anyway, and I don't have any more time left. And it doesn't help you. It's not renewing you in some way. You know, if you said, like, I'm really tired, I'm going to lie down and take 20 minutes and sleep, that could actually help. That wouldn't be procrastinating, that would be a smart choice about helping yourself to work effectively. But that's not what we're doing when we're procrastinating. We're just running off to whatever is not the thing we're supposed to be doing. And during those 20 minutes that you're sitting, think about the thing you need to do, but don't work on it. So ask yourself questions like, why am I anxious about this? Why is my finger twitching toward my pocket to get my phone so I can pull up YouTube? You know, what is it in me that when I think about this project, I go, and try to see if you can figure out what the source of the anxiety is. Or ask yourself, what actually am I supposed to be doing? Like, what really actually is the thing that needs to get done? And just sit there for 20 minutes. Here's the beautiful part. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to start your project. It's like procrastinating because you don't have to do it yet. But during those 20 minutes, you're likely to calm down. The anxiety will abate a little bit. You haven't gotten yourself distracted with something that's just going to keep you running on something else. And it's much more likely that after those 20 minutes, you'll be able to get up and begin your project. I think that's really cool. Here's another one. Break it down into small steps. Has anybody heard this before? Okay. Break big things into small steps. So, ideally you want to aim for smaller steps that you can do in 20 minutes, give or take. Right? So, writing a 15-page research paper, it would make me anxious if the way I thought about it was, now, today, at this moment, I have to sit down and write a 15-page research paper. If that's the way I'm thinking about it at the beginning, I am going to find a computer someplace and distract myself, right? It's hard to get started on huge things because it doesn't feel like you can actually do it. You act now, but now is not long enough to actually do the thing. So it produces anxiety, you want to avoid it, it's overwhelming. If you break it into small chunks, And step one is I need to pull out the syllabus and make sure I have a really clear understanding of what I'm supposed to accomplish with this paper. You can do that. If that's it, like all I gotta do is read the thing and make sure I know what I'm doing, fine. Then you look at the next thing on the list, and the next thing on the list is brainstorm about what types of books I should get from the library, or what sort of sites I should be looking for online that will give me reliable information that I can use for this paper. Those things you can do. It doesn't produce a lot of anxiety to think, I need to spend 20 minutes thinking about what kind of sources I want to use. And if you break it down like that, it's much easier to get going on a small thing rather than feeling like you have to do the whole thing. So, get your piece of paper and your pen, flip over to the blank side. And I want to give you a moment right now to think of a current project that you have to do. It may be something that is already on your to-do list. It may be something that you know is coming down the pike but haven't started working on yet, but something that is going to require work in the future. And just break it down into small steps. Just take a minute and do that. Think of how you can break it down into smaller chunks. Okay, if you feel like you're done, just go back and look at them again. Are they really small enough? Are there any of them that you can break into smaller chunks? You know, if you get down to the level of like a minute and a half, it really doesn't matter, but you know, can you really do that in 20 minutes, and is there a way to divide it up? Okay, this is meant to be a quick exercise, not like homework time, so I'm going to stop you there. All right, now I probably produced some anxiety for you, and I apologize because I knew that was going to happen when I said, all right, think about anything you're scared of. But how many people feel like either while they were writing the list, or at least can imagine that if they did this with projects in the future, that this would reduce your anxiety and make it easier to get started? Okay, good. Try it. This has been really helpful for me. Really, really, really helpful. Those things that are on my to-do list where I look at it and I go, nope, next, no matter how urgent they are, it's always because they're too big. So for this talk, for example, I mean, here's the simple version. Go back and listen to the lectures I want to talk about. Then brainstorm everything I can think of to say. Just dump it all down. Then the next step is brainstorm, choose things I want to say and cross out things I don't want to say. Then with what's left, organize them. You know, those are little chunks that I could break the preparation for this down into, and they were totally manageable. So I encourage you to do that. All right, so for the next several minutes, I'm going to give you some time for this to talk with the people in your small group. The people at your table. Yeah, the chair people are clumping. Good. So here's two things. It's at the bottom of your sheet, okay? So I'm going to say it, but you'll forget it, so look down there. So one past or current experience where you can see that you were motivated by the drive to reduce anxiety. Maybe you didn't realize it at the time. Maybe your experience at the time was just, nope, and running the other way. But as you look back, you can realize that was an anxious response. And then what did you do, or what have you been doing in response to that feeling of anxiety? And was it helpful? Did it do you any good? Then the second one is, what's one thing you can do this week? So, practical, right? What's one thing that you can do this week that will help you outsmart yourself with regard to those things? So, some good time to talk there. Why don't you think for a minute and then go ahead and discuss.